Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're stepping into the feather-filled, mud-soaked world of a medieval falconer. A life lived between noble expectations, stubborn birds, and the unmistakable smell of damp straw. You're not a knight or a lord, just the unlucky soul responsible for creatures who think they outrank everyone. Before we start, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair, plus other sleep tools, in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You wake before the sun decides whether it intends to rise at all. The sky above you is a dim watercolour of blue and grey, smudged in a way that makes you wonder if dawn is simply running late out of spite. The air hangs cool around your face, chilled enough to make you question your life choices, yet soft enough to lull you back towards sleep. If you weren't already being summoned by obligations that do not care for your comfort. Your breath floats in front of you like a small pale cloud as you sit up, trying to remember what part of you once believed falconry sounded noble. Whoever that version of you was, they surely didn't picture mornings like this. You swing your feet toward the earth and immediately regret it. The ground is damp from the rain that insisted on falling most of the night. It hasn't settled into anything respectable like solid soil. It has chosen instead to transform into a cold, sticky mud that grips your boots with the enthusiasm of an overeager acquaintance. You take a hesitant step, then another, listening to the soft sucking sound beneath you. This is the texture of your morning greeting. Mud. Mud with personality. Mud with ambition. The manor is still quiet. Even the cooks in the distant kitchen have yet to begin their clattering. The silence is only interrupted by the soft hooting of an owl, who is clearly finishing its night shift, sounding mildly annoyed that you're early for yours. You move through the soft half-light toward the mews, rubbing your hands together for warmth that refuses to arrive. You try to reassure yourself that this job has dignity, that you are entrusted with the care of creatures once revered as symbols of royalty and honour. This thought lasts until you reach the door. The smell reaches you before your hand does. The mews have their own climate, one that involves a complex blend of damp straw, feathers, old wood, and a pungent undertone that you try to pretend is not droppings. You pull the door open, attempting to breathe only shallowly, and step inside. The darkness shifts, feathers rustle, several pairs of eyes blink open with the slow, deliberate judgment of creatures who know they outrank you in your own workplace. The falcons stare at you with expressions that are simultaneously regal and deeply unimpressed. They look like beings who understand their lineage far too well, creatures who remember a time when they were companions of kings rather than reluctant colleagues of someone who slept on a straw mattress. You nod politely to them because good manners cost nothing, and because you suspect they would resent you even more without them. You begin your morning with a task that has become an unspoken ritual of resignation. You squat near the straw, brush it aside with the back of your hand, and find yourself elbow deep in yesterday's mud and everything that settled in it. You do not question why you do this before breakfast. You no longer question anything. You simply work, moving slowly to avoid startling the falcons who are still deciding whether to tolerate your existence today. They shift on their perches, hopping lightly or turning in slow, deliberate rotations that remind you of people adjusting their chairs to get a better view of a performance they did not ask for. A soft thump draws your attention. One of the birds ruffles its wings as though preparing a formal complaint. Another yawns, an oddly delicate gesture for a creature that has ripped apart more small animals than you care to count. Their feathers catch the faint blue light that filters in, making them appear almost beautiful for a moment. Almost. You take a breath, trying to appreciate the stillness in the mews. You find a fleeting calm in the faint flutter of wings, the dusty scent of dry feathers, and the soft creaking of wooden beams overhead. Then you stand, stretch your aching back, and begin the inspection that the nobleman insists upon. You move from perch to perch, checking jesses, scanning for loose feathers, examining talons that serve as constant reminders of your place in the hierarchy. The birds hold themselves like royalty, enduring a servant's presence out of necessity. One leans forward with an exaggerated sniff in your direction, as if confirming that you indeed smell like mud and regret. You offer it a small nod, uncertain whether you are apologizing or agreeing. The nobleman, of course, is nowhere in sight. He is often deeply invested in falconry, from the comfort of a warm bed or a well-padded chair. You imagine him asleep now, dreaming of noble hunts, elegant birds, and the magical ability to never clean anything himself. You try to maintain a polite expression as you work, but the falcons seem to read every thought you have. One tilts its head, examining you like an artist, deciding whether you are worth drawing. You shift your weight and continue pretending this is all completely fine. You move toward the far end of the mews, where the morning light filters through the slats in soft, thin beams. The air is cold enough to sting your fingers, so you rub your hands against your gloves, hoping to summon some non-existent warmth. A falcon watches your every movement, blinking slowly, its golden eyes narrowed as if calculating how inconvenient you are. You whisper a quiet greeting. The bird replies by fluffing its feathers and turning its back in the dignified way birds do when they want you to know you are irrelevant. With the straw tidied and the perches checked, you gather the tools you'll need. The glove still damp from yesterday, a rag that is somehow never clean, no matter how often you wash it, and a leather pouch that holds feed for the birds. You tie the pouch at your waist and feel its slight weight pulling at you, like a reminder of what the morning will demand. The falcons lean forward when they see the pouch. They know exactly what it means. Their sudden interest is flattering, in a way, if you ignore the fact that it's entirely conditional. You open the shutters a bit more to allow the sun, now reluctantly rising, to stretch across the room. The light paints the feathers in soft gold, highlighting the intricate patterns that make these birds so admired. You can see why nobles adore them. They're elegant, fierce, and entirely unwilling to do anything unless they feel like it. You wonder what it would feel like to live your life that way. You reach down to clean your boots, though the mud resists your effort, clinging in thick layers around the soles. The earthy smell rises with each scrape, blending into the familiar perfume of the mews. You take a moment to stand still and breathe. You feel the cool wooden floor beneath you, the faint movement of air as a falcon shifts, the distant murmur of servants beginning their day somewhere in the manor. There is a rhythm to all of it, a slow current carrying you forward, whether you approve or not. You glance at the falcons once more. They blink in unison. You cannot tell if they are acknowledging your presence or simply tolerating it. Either way, you adjust the glove on your arm, straighten your back, and prepare yourself for the day ahead. You know that nothing about it will be glamorous. The nobleman may speak of honor, tradition, and mastery, but you have already learned that falconry is mostly about managing expectations, especially your own. You step outside into the cold morning air, leaving the mews behind you. The sky has softened into pale gold. The fields are still wet, and the falcons, behind their wooden walls, wait for you with the silent confidence of creatures who understand exactly how much of your morning belongs to them. You follow the gravel path that winds from the mews toward the manor's inner grounds, your boots carrying the memory of that stubborn mud you tried unsuccessfully to scrape away. The morning air is sharpening now, the pale gold sun finally settling into its role after the slow, hesitant rise it performed earlier. The fields glisten with dew, making everything look far more serene than it feels. You breathe it in, letting the crispness settle into your lungs, though a faint smell of feathers clings stubbornly to you, refusing to let go. Ahead, you hear the voice that shapes your days even more than the birds do. It drifts across the courtyard with the confidence of someone rehearsing a sermon and the volume of someone who expects applause long before he earns it. Your nobleman is already awake, already dressed in impractical fabrics, and already speaking about falconry as though he invented the profession single-handedly during a moment of divine inspiration. You steel yourself for the performance. He turns the moment he hears your footsteps, smiling with the satisfaction of a man who sees falconry as an art and himself as its patron saint. He gestures you forward with an elegance he must have practiced in a mirror, the sleeve of his cloak sweeping dramatically through the air. You suspect he enjoys this part more than the actual handling of birds. "Ah, there you are, Wissa," he says, puffing himself up with the pride of someone announcing a grand feast. "A fine morning for the work." You nod politely, though your arm is already aching beneath the weight of the falcon perched on your glove, its talons gripping you with the steady confidence of someone who knows exactly which of the two of you holds the real authority. The bird leans forward in a slow, calculated motion and nibbles your knuckles with the gentle warning of a creature asserting its boundaries. You manage a neutral expression, though inside you're certain you're bleeding dignity, even if not blood. Your lord hardly notices. His attention is fixed on the falcon in the way a scholar might admire a manuscript he cannot read. The bird shifts, ruffling its feathers with the faint hiss of sliding quills, and your nobleman nods as though it has just delivered an insightful comment. He begins speaking with the reverence of a man reciting scripture written in a language he does not understand. "Magnificent creatures," he says, placing a hand dramatically over his heart. "They respond only to the purest discipline, the firmest guidance, the noblest hand." He glances at you, perhaps remembering for a fleeting moment that you are the noble hand in this scenario, though he quickly dismisses the thought. He prefers the version of falconry, where he is central, heroic, and effortlessly competent. You maintain a calm demeanour, shifting your stance slightly as the weight of the bird begins to settle uncomfortably against your joints. Your arm trembles, but you mask it beneath a slow inhalation. The nobleman misinterprets your bracing breath as agreement and continues with renewed enthusiasm. He launches into a detailed monologue about techniques he claims to have perfected. You recognise several as ideas he overheard from you weeks ago. Others are pure fiction, crafted from the nobleman's imagination and his unwavering belief that authority includes accuracy. He speaks of wind currents as though he personally controls them, of training regimens that the falcons have never performed, and of strategies he swears were once used by the greatest lords of the land. You nod gently, the way one nods at a child proudly showing a drawing that bears only a vague resemblance to a horse. The falcon on your arm blinks slowly and nibbles again, firmer this time. Not violent, simply corrective, a reminder that you are holding a creature that does not negotiate. Your nobleman does not notice the interaction, partly because he is too enchanted with his own words, and partly because he has never been bitten by a falcon and therefore assumes it never happens. You walk beside him toward the outer fields, where training exercises will no doubt occur, under his watchful but utterly unhelpful gaze. The grass is cold beneath your boots, brushing against your legs like curious fingertips. The wind brings the faint scent of wood smoke from the village beyond the manor walls. A rooster crows once, late enough to suggest that even it is unmotivated today. Your lord pauses at the edge of the field and gazes dramatically at the horizon. "You see," he says, gesturing with a flourish, "falconry is not simply a task, it is an art, a philosophy, a discipline of the mind." You shift slightly, trying not to let the bird slip, while the nobleman extends his arms as though expecting the landscape to applaud him. The falcon ignores him entirely, choosing instead to adjust its feathers with quiet efficiency. You stand there patiently as he continues to give a speech no one requested. He paces in a slow arc around you, arms clasped behind his back, cloak trailing in a way that looks far more impressive than it should. He speaks of ancient falconers, of noble hunts conducted by kings, of heroic birds capable of feats. He describes with such grandiosity that you begin to suspect he is inventing half of it on the spot. The wind rustles his hair in a way that seems coordinated with his storytelling, which feels unfair. The falcon loses patience long before you do. It leans forward with a significant bite this time, a decisive nip to your knuckle that stings sharply. You inhale softly through your nose. The nobleman glances over with a patronizing smile and says, "Careful. These creatures require confidence," as though it is fear, not pain, causing the blood rushing to your fingertips. You resist the temptation to ask whether he has ever felt a beak press into his bone. He steps closer, tightening his cloak around his shoulders with pompous elegance. "Now," he says, lowering his voice to a grave tone, "we shall demonstrate proper handling." You brace yourself. The falcon does the same, though in its own disapproving way. Your lord extends a hand, flat and steady, as if expecting the bird to leap onto him in admiration. It does not. Instead, it watches him with a slow, deliberate stare that borders on insult. After a long moment that feels like an eternity carved into silence, your nobleman withdraws his hand and pretends it was merely an illustration, not a rejection. He clears his throat and quickly shifts focus to the landscape, pointing at a tree line that offers no particular relevance. "Observe the wind," he instructs. "Falcons sense it long before we do." You feel the breeze brush your face and realize the birds probably sensed it long before he did as well. You continue walking with him, your steps sinking softly into the damp ground. The bird shifts again, a heavy reminder of the hours ahead. The nobleman speaks with increasing passion, describing hunts he claims to have mastered, despite your memory of him tripping over his cloak once after releasing a hawk prematurely. You keep your expression smooth, your breathing steady, your tone respectful. It is easier that way. The falcon nibbles your knuckles once more gently now, as though acknowledging the absurdity of the conversation unfolding around you. You cradle the weight of the bird, feeling the warmth beneath its feathers, the slight tension in its talons, the faint scent of earth lingering on its plumage. You adjust your grip on the glove and continue across the field, the nobleman's voice droning on ahead of you like a sermon to which no one has confessed. You move forward slowly, carried on by the rhythm of your steps and the endless lecture that accompanies them. The light strengthens, the air grows warmer, the horizon stretches open, and you feel the familiar heaviness of duty settling upon your shoulders as the day begins its long, demanding climb. You make your way back toward the mews with the falcon balanced on your arm, its weight a steady, unspoken reminder that your morning will not be claimed by leisure. The field behind you is still coated in dew, glinting innocently as though unaware of the responsibilities waiting for you. The nobleman's voice fades into the distance, replaced by the muffled chirping of small birds who have no intention of being trained by anyone. You move toward the low wooden structure that houses the creatures considered prestigious in paintings but far less glamorous in person. The mews sit along the outer edge of the manor grounds, close enough for the nobleman to brag about them from his balcony, yet far enough that he never has to smell them directly. You can already detect the aroma wafting on the breeze as you approach. It settles into your nose with a familiarity that you wish you did not possess. There is no mistaking it. Feathers, droppings, damp straw, and underneath it all, a stubborn scent that might once have been meat before time claimed it as something more ambiguous. You pause at the doorway. The wooden frame is weathered from years of exposure, its grains softened by rain and layered with faint scratches from talons and time. You push the door open and feel the air shift around you, warm and thick with the unmistakable perfume of the birds inside. There is no breeze here. The mews hold their own climate, concentrated and unmoving, like an elaborate stew of scents no one ever asked to simmer. The birds react the moment you step in. They do not greet you so much as acknowledge your intrusion. Wings rustle with the sound of dry fabric brushing against itself. Feathers lift and settle with small purposeful movements. The faint tapping of claws against wood echoes lightly, precise and rhythmic. You hear soft chuffs, little exhalations that falcons make when deciding whether you're worth paying attention to. It feels like walking into a council chamber filled with small, heavily feathered aristocrats who have spent the night forming opinions about you. You bring your falcon back to its perch, taking care not to jostle its wings. It steps onto the wooden beam with the dignified grace of a creature who believes it owns the place. You loosen the jesses, give the bird a final glance, and step away as it fluffs its feathers into a formidable sphere, satisfied with its return. The mews settle again into their version of quiet. The sounds become softer, more deliberate, as though the birds are allowing you to exist here temporarily. You breathe in slowly, letting the scents swirl in your lungs despite your better judgment. The air feels heavier in this room, warmed by feathers and bodies and the persistent humidity of straw that never fully dries. The smell settles onto your skin, clinging with the determination of a memory. You walk through the narrow aisle between the perches, boots sinking into straw that crunches beneath your weight. Each falcon watches you with an expression both inquisitive and critical. Their eyes glint with sharp intelligence, catching the dim morning light filtering through the small cracks in the walls. You find yourself nodding to them out of habit, an unnecessary courtesy that seems to irritate no one and pleases everyone. Your first task is always the same. You gather armfuls of old straw, some scattered, some matted from the night's activities, and carry it toward the side door that leads to the refuse heap. The straw sticks to your gloves, clings to your sleeves, and somehow finds its way into your boots. You set it down, shake out your gloves, and return for more. The birds observe your labour like royal spectators, amused by the effort of peasants. One falcon, a particularly judgmental one, with a mottled breast and a permanently suspicious expression, leans forward as you pass. It makes a soft rattling sound in its throat. You pause, unsure if it is scolding you or offering commentary. You continue walking. The bird tilts its head sharply, unimpressed with your reaction. You pull fresh straw from the bundle stored near the wall, its dry scent momentarily relieving you from the heavier odours surrounding you. You spread it beneath the perches in wide, careful sweeps, smoothing it into even layers that will last until the birds decide otherwise. The straw crackles under your hands, an earthy counterpoint to the faint rustling of feathers overhead. As you work, your mind drifts into the steady rhythm of the place. There is something hypnotic about the routine. Scoop, carry, spread, straighten, adjust. The actions require little thought, allowing your attention to drift to the quiet complexity of the room. The mews hold stories in every corner, claw marks on the beams from impatient talons, faint stains on the floor from meals that refuse to stay contained, feathers drifting in slow arcs through the air before settling like fragile reminders of all the work you do before sunlight truly arrives. The birds shift again. Their movements are sharper now, more alert. They watch you with a collective focus that feels almost ceremonial. You walk toward the feed preparation table, where the smell becomes stronger, concentrated into something that tests your resolve. You lay out the small pieces of meat, each portion cut with care, each piece handled with the resigned patience of someone too used to the texture. You place the portions into tidy piles before carrying them to the birds, one at a time. Each falcon receives its serving with a distinct personality. Some take their meal with delicate precision, barely touching your glove. Others snap with confident speed, eager and unapologetic. A few savour each bite with the slow satisfaction of creatures who know they are being admired. You speak quietly to them. You cannot help it. The words come naturally, soft reassurances that seem to steady their movements, even if they pretend not to listen. Once they finish, the mews grow still again. You lean one arm against the wooden wall and breathe deeply, though the air remains stubbornly stagnant. The warmth from the birds keeps the room almost cosy, if you ignore the rest. You run a hand along the grain of the wall, feeling its smoothness in some places and the rough splintering in others. The mews are old, older than most structures around the manor. You imagine how many falconers stood here before you, enduring the same ritual, breathing the same stubborn scent, pretending to know exactly what they were doing. You stroll toward the small opening at the far end of the room. The sunlight has brightened now, spilling through the cracks and casting thin beams across the floor. The dust dances in the light, swirling gently like tiny spirits drifting on the morning air. The beams highlight the edges of feathers, giving them a faint halo. The birds preen in silence, smoothing their plumage with small intricate motions that seem almost meditative. You lean against a post, letting the stillness settle through you. The mews, despite their smell, offer a kind of grounded peace, a quiet hum that fills the space between your thoughts. The birds blink slowly. One tucks its head beneath a wing, feathers shivering softly. Another stands tall, scanning the room with regal disinterest. Their presence becomes a backdrop, a steady chorus of small movements and soft chuffing breaths. You let your shoulders drop. Your arms relax. The scent, heavy as it is, becomes part of the air you have come to accept. The birds rustle once more, adjusting themselves, for no reason other than preference. The wood creaks faintly as the structure warms with the growing sunlight. The straw crackles under your shifting weight. The sounds blend into a slow, natural rhythm, unhurried and unbothered. You stand there for a long moment, taking in the strangely comforting chaos of feathers and warm air and avian judgment. There is fatigue in your bones, certainly, but there is also an odd, steady calm that settles over the mews at daybreak. A calm built not from cleanliness or quiet, but from the predictable patterns of creatures who expect nothing from you except consistency. You breathe in once more, letting the thick scent fill your lungs, and step deeper into the room to continue the morning's work. It is not elegant work, it is not glamorous work, but it is yours, at least for today, and the birds accept your presence in their chamber of scent and feathers with what passes for falcon approval. For now, that is enough. You take a slow breath, the kind meant to steady your nerves rather than your lungs, and let your eyes drift across the mews before settling on the falcon you must work with today. The bird stares back at you with the unsettling calm of a creature that has already decided how inconvenient you are. Its feathers lie perfectly smooth, each one arranged with the confidence of a being that knows beauty. Is effortless when effort is beneath you. Its posture is statuesque, regal, and extremely misleading. You know that beneath this elegant stillness lies a personality that prefers talons over diplomacy. You walk toward it with caution, disguised as confidence. The birds can sense doubt, or so you've come to believe. You extend your arm with the glove already tightened around your wrist. The leather still holds the faint warmth of earlier work, softened by time and hardened by necessity. You stop a breath away from the falcon, letting it see you approach, because surprising a bird with weapons for feet is never a wise choice. The falcon tilts its head, not enough to acknowledge respect, but just enough to suggest it is considering whether your existence today is worth tolerating. You maintain a calm expression, one you have practiced in silence many mornings. A collected look, slightly tired, vaguely dignified. A look you imagine seasoned falconers might wear in illuminated manuscripts. You brace your arm and give a quiet invitation. The bird does not accept. Instead, it leans forward with the theatrical slowness of an actor preparing a dramatic monologue and taps the side of your glove with its beak. It is not a violent gesture. It is worse. It is gentle, testing. A polite peck that carries the full weight of disdain. You might as well have offered it an inferior seat at a banquet. You keep your expression neutral, even as your arm tenses. You try again. You shift your stance, adjust the angle of your glove, and give a soft coaxing sound that you hope conveys something between understanding and authority. The falcon bows its head, as if considering the request, then promptly bites the edge of your glove, harder this time. Not enough to injure, just enough to remind you that it is participating under protest. You breathe deeply, feeling the air move slowly down your throat, as though your body is trying to match the patience your mind is struggling to maintain. The falcon watches your chest rise and fall with the blank, superior stare of someone unimpressed by breathing as a skill. Finally, with the exaggerated reluctance of a noble being forced into manual labor, the bird steps onto your glove, one talon first, then another. Each movement is slow and deliberate, as if emphasizing how much of its precious time is being spent humoring you. Its weight settles into your arm, heavier than its graceful form suggests. You adjust your stance again, feeling the muscles in your forearm tighten to support it. The bird digs in, not maliciously, but firmly, securing itself with talons that seem unaware they are attached to a creature considered noble. You smile faintly, though the corners of your mouth hold the tension of someone pretending not to notice a mild but persistent pain. You shift your grip and gently lift your arm, inviting the falcon to steady itself. It does, but not before giving a few extra pecks to the glove, as if inspecting your craftsmanship. You are not offended. The glove has endured worse criticism. You move toward the open space in the mews, where training is manageable. The air is warmer there, stirred by shafts of sunlight that thread through the gaps in the roof beams. The faint glow turns motes of dust into drifting flecks of gold. It is almost peaceful if you ignore the talons pricking into your skin through the padding. You lower your arm slightly, trying to coax the bird into a more balanced stance. It resists immediately. Falcons have mastered the art of disagreeing without a sound. It shifts its weight to a less convenient part of your wrist, ensuring maximum discomfort with minimal effort. You maintain your calm posture, adjusting subtly, gripping your other hand behind your back to hide the tension running through your fingers. This is the part of falconry no tapestry ever shows. The quiet skirmish between human patience and avian indifference. The bird pretends not to hear your gentle commands. You pretend not to feel the ache in your tendons. The two of you stand in a stillness so awkward it borders on ceremonial. You begin the first step of handling practice. A gentle lift of the arm, a soft whistle, a command shaped from habit more than authority. The falcon responds by tightening its grip, as if anchoring itself against your ambition. Its feathers puff slightly, a sign of annoyance or amusement. You're never entirely sure. You try again, this time with a subtle shift of your weight and a quieter tone. The bird flicks its head sharply and gives your thumb a pointed peck. You do not flinch. The falcon respects consistency, even if it refuses to cooperate. Handling is an art, they say, a dance between equal partners. But you have come to learn it is really a negotiation in which you have almost no leverage. You adjust to the bird's mood, adapt to its demands, anticipate its whims. You breathe in the stale, sweet scent of feathers and straw and try to project serenity. The falcon is unimpressed, but mildly tolerant. You begin working on small movements, tilting your arm, shifting its balance point, coaxing it into short steps to encourage responsiveness. Every attempt is met with a combination of resistance and judgment that would be exhausting if you weren't already beyond exhaustion. The bird pecks again, a precise little jab that seems more like a commentary on your technique than an actual refusal. You accept the feedback with the patience of someone who has been pecked politely enough times to know the routine. You adjust again. The falcon shifts. Its wings extend slightly, catching the light. For a moment it looks majestic, as though ready to take flight at the slightest suggestion. It does not take flight. Instead, it folds its wings with the deliberate slowness of someone taking their time, deciding where to place an insult. It leans forward and nips the base of your glove with a tiny click of its beak. Not painful, just pointed, a reminder of its preferences. You continue the exercise, quiet motions, small commands, a steady arm even as the muscles tremble beneath the weight. The falcon tests your resilience with every shift of its talons, every indifferent stare, every calculated nibble. You remain composed because dignity is one of the few things you can control. The air grows warmer around you, thick with the natural scent of feathers and wood warmed by sunlight. The other birds watch silently from their perches, as though enjoying the spectacle of your struggle. Their eyes gleam in the dim light, sharp and amused. You suspect they find this entertaining. Eventually, after enough coaxing to persuade a mountain to move, the falcon performs a small hop from one position on your glove to another. It is barely an accomplishment, but you accept it as though it were a triumph. The bird pretends not to notice your subtle relief. By the time you finish, your arm feels like a stretched rope, your patience like a frayed thread. You lower the bird gently, back onto its perch. It steps off with the dismissive grace of someone leaving an uninteresting conversation. You loosen your glove and flex your fingers, each joint aching with a dull familiar throb. The falcon gives one final, almost courteous peck to the wooden beam, as though ending the session with its own conclusion. You nod in mutual acknowledgement. It is not respect, exactly, more a shared understanding that neither of you is particularly impressed with the other. You step back, breathing in the warm, feather-filled air, and let your shoulders fall. The mews settle again around you, filled with the soft rustle of birds resettling themselves. The quiet seeps into your bones. You leave the falcon to its perch and walk toward the doorway, your arms still tingling from the polite violence of the morning's lesson. For better or worse, this is your craft, or at least your burden, and the birds, in their feathery certainty, will always remind you of it. By the time you step out of the mews, your arm still hums faintly from the falcon's determined grip, a dull ache settling into the muscles that have long since surrendered the idea of feeling rested. The air outside is warmer now, touched by sunlight that stretches across the grounds with the confidence of someone who slept better than you. The wind brushes against your face with the faint scent of grass and distant livestock, a welcome contrast to the feathery perfume you've been steeped in. A small table sits in the shade beside the mews, the unofficial workstation assigned to you by tradition, convenience, and the universal medieval belief that anything involving patience should be done far away from people who might complain. The table is cluttered with scraps of leather, loose buckles, frayed cords, bent rings, cracked hoods, and gloves that have seen more personality than comfort. You exhale slowly, already feeling your shoulders preparing for another round of work that demands precision even when your eyelids feel heavy. You pick up the first piece, a jest that has frayed into thin strands. It looks innocent enough, although you know better. The jest is a simple strip of leather, yet it holds the uncanny ability to break only at the most humiliating moments. Your nobleman once declared a hunt ruined because of a single snapped jest. According to him, the bird had rebelled against inferior craftsmanship. According to you, the bird simply saw an opportunity. You sit on the small wooden bench, the seat uneven from years of weather, and the weight of falconers who probably complained in silence, just as you do. You thread the needle, the tiny metal point gleaming briefly in the sun. The thread passes through the stiff leather with resistance, the sound a soft, gritty whisper that fills the quiet around you. You work slowly, careful not to slip, careful not to misalign the edge. The falcons may not appreciate craftsmanship, but they certainly punish sloppy work. A shadow falls over your hands. You glance up to see one of the falcons perched on a nearby stand, observing you with a steady gaze. It is supervising in the way only birds can, silent, judgmental, and entirely too aware of the fact that you depend on its cooperation. Its feathers shimmer with warm tones, where the sunlight catches them, though the expression in its eyes suggests it sees no reason to appear impressed. You continue stitching. Each pull of the thread tightens the jest, closing gaps, straightening edges. The leather warms under your fingers, softening as you shape it. The falcon tilts its head, following every movement with a level of scrutiny that would be admirable if it weren't mildly insulting. You mutter under your breath, not words exactly, more the sound of someone resigned to their fate. The bird blinks slowly, the avian equivalent of raising an eyebrow. Once the jest is finished, you set it aside and inspect the next problem. A hood with a buckle that has decided to detach itself without warning. The hood is small, made of thin leather, shaped to cover the falcon's eyes during travel or moments requiring calm. You lift it, feeling its softness, the faint smell of oil and hand-worn edges. It would be a lovely item if it didn't break twice a week. You pick up the buckle, a tiny metal piece no larger than your thumbnail, and examine the tear in the hood where it once lived. The leather fibers look stretched and tired, as though they too have accepted the cyclical nature of falconer life. You thread the needle again, push it slowly through the edge, and begin reinforcing the seam. Your hands work steadily, muscle memory guiding them through the motions. The falcon continues watching, feathers ruffling lightly whenever you shift position. A faint breeze passes over your workspace, carrying with it the mixed scents of leather, dust, and grass. You inhale deeply, letting the air clear the heaviness from your chest. The world seems quieter here, even with the constant presence of birds. There is a rhythm to this part of your work, a slower rhythm, patient, methodical, repetitive in a way that softens the mind rather than exhausts it. You finish the hood and hang it on a small wooden peg beside the table. It joins a row of items waiting for later use, each one a testament to how many hours of your life have been donated to stitching, oiling, tightening, and adjusting. You flex your fingers, feeling the faint stiffness that lingers from holding the needle so long. Your next task is the glove. Not just any glove, the glove, the one glove in your possession that has history etched into every stain and crease. The pad on the back bears the marks of countless bites, nips, and talon grips. The leather is thick, heavy, and beginning to crack in places where time stretches it thin. You examine the small tear forming along the thumb seam. It is not catastrophic, but it is the sort of flaw that a falcon might decide to exploit for reasons known only to creatures who prefer drama in small doses. You thread your needle again. The stitches need to be tighter here, reinforced to withstand the next bird's enthusiasm. Your fingers trace the edges of the tear. You imagine the glove whispering its grievances, the weight it has carried, the pecks it has endured, the nobleman's complaints it has silently absorbed. You patch it with careful precision, pressing the seam flat with the heel of your hand once you finish. The falcon supervising you gives a soft, chirping sound, a tone you have learned to interpret as mild approval. Or perhaps it is hunger, maybe annoyance. You can never quite tell. You nod anyway, acknowledging the comment, whether real or imagined. The table offers you its next challenge, a bundle of small rings and leather strips that once belonged to the falcon's anklets. These tiny components, deceptively simple, have an irritating tendency to bend or snap. You sort through them, separating the salvageable pieces from the ones that will join the ever-growing pile of discarded metal. The rings feel cool against your fingertips. The leather strips feel warm, pliable from the sun that has landed on them all morning. You cut new pieces, shape them, punch holes with a small awl, and fit the rings through with slow deliberation. Each movement matches the calm breath you draw in and release. The falcon leans closer, its talons clinking gently against the wooden perch. It watches with such intent that you begin to wonder if it enjoys this part of the day more than you do. When the anklets are finished, you place them neatly on the edge of the table. A small collection of mended tools sits beside them, each one imperfect but functional. Each one enough to get you through the next handful of hours, perhaps a day if the birds are feeling charitable. You wipe your hands on your apron, lift a small block of beeswax from the table, and begin rubbing it along the edges of the newly stitched leather. The warm, sweet smell of the wax mixes with the earthy scents around you. It softens the leather further, seals the stitches, and leaves a faint sheen that catches the light. You work slowly, content in the quiet repetition. The rhythmic motion eases the tension in your shoulders. It gives your hands something simple to focus on. The falcon supervising you ruffles its feathers again, a small sound like the rustle of parchment. It hops once on its perch, shaking loose a few tiny strands of down that drift lazily through the warm air. You watch them fall, fluttering gently until they reach the ground. The bird follows your gaze, then looks back at your work, unimpressed but tolerant. You gather everything you have repaired and begin sorting the items into their proper places. Jesses folded neatly, hoods hung in a row, anklets arranged in pairs, the glove laid flat to dry. Your workspace looks briefly orderly. A fleeting miracle that will last until the next training session disrupts it entirely. You glance at the falcon one more time. It stands perfectly still. Chest lifted, eyes sharp with the same silent authority it carried earlier. You feel its steady gaze follow you as you rise from the bench, stretching your back until it gives a soft, reluctant crack. The sunlight warms your shoulders, easing the stiffness of long, careful work. The bird blinks slowly, a closing and opening of those keen eyes that hold something oddly reassuring. Not approval, not gratitude, something closer to acknowledgement, a quiet recognition that you will be needed again soon, that the equipment you repaired will be tested, tugged, pecked, possibly destroyed. You breathe in the mixture of scents around you: leather, wax, sun-warmed wood, and the faint, ever-present trace of the birds themselves. Then you gather your tools, letting the routine guide you toward whatever the day will demand next. For now, the equipment is ready, already enough to survive the hands of a falconer and the whims of a falcon, which is the closest thing to victory you ever get. You gather the repaired equipment from your workstation, stacking each piece with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knows the piece will not last. The sunlight warms your shoulders until the shadows shift, stretching long shapes across the ground that remind you the day is moving on without your permission. A soft breeze lifts a few strands of straw near your feet before settling into stillness again. It is the sort of quiet that offers one final moment of calm before the next necessary task arrives. You feel it before you think it. The birds are waiting. They always are at this hour. Their expectations form an invisible pressure on your shoulders, a reminder that their appetites follow a schedule far more reliable than your nobleman's imagination. So you turn toward the small feed shed beside the mews, a weather-beaten structure that somehow manages to look both ancient and recently neglected at the same time. The door creaks open with a long, tired groan that expresses more emotion than most people you know. Inside, the air is thick, heavy, with the metallic smell of raw meat blended with the sweet, faintly sour scent of straw stored too long. Wooden shelves line the walls, holding baskets of feathers, scraps of cloth, small tools, and a few containers whose contents you once knew but have wisely decided not to question anymore. You brace yourself and walk deeper into the room. A wooden block sits in the center, its surface scarred with knife marks, darkened with stains that tell the story of countless mornings just like this one. You pull out the small blade tucked beside it. The handle feels familiar in your grip, fitting your hand like a reluctant friend. You take a slow breath, preparing yourself for what you must touch. The meat lies in a wooden trough along the back wall, wrapped in cloth that has long accepted its fate. You peel back the layers with measured care, greeted by the unmistakable blend of scents that hits you with unapologetic force. Some of the pieces are identifiable, others are not. You gave up attempting classifications long ago. Now you simply sort by what the birds will tolerate and what they will absolutely reject. You pick up the first piece, feeling the cool, damp texture against your glove. A slight stickiness clings to your fingers, a reminder that medieval falconry has a way of erasing one's sense of elegance. You place the portion on the block and begin cutting it into manageable cubes. The blade slices through with a soft rhythmic sound that feels almost meditative if you detach your mind enough. The air around you grows warmer as the sun reaches the shed's open doorway. Dust drifts lazily in the light, settling on surfaces that have not been clean since the day the structure was built. You continue preparing the food, carefully selecting portions for each bird based on size, temperament, and the unpredictable whims they reveal only during feeding. Once the pieces are cut, you gather them onto a wooden tray that has lost most of its original shape. The tray wobbles slightly as you lift it. You steady it with your hip and step out into the open air again, grateful for the breeze that washes away the heaviness of the shed's scent. The birds sense your return long before you reach the mews. A soft ripple of movement stirs inside the wooden structure. Feathers brush against beams, talons click on perches, wings shift in anticipation. They know exactly what the tray means. You walk toward the entrance with careful steps, not because the tray is fragile, but because dropping it would ruin your day and delight the birds far more than their meal. Inside, the mews feel alive. Each falcon watches you with a focus so sharp it might cut. Their eyes track every movement, the way your hands adjust your grip, the way your shoulders shift under the tray's weight, the way your steps fall on the straw-laden floor. You are not an honoured guest here. You are the morning servant, delivering offerings to creatures who accept them with the regal drama of monarchs. You start with the falcon closest to the door. It leans forward, feathers slicked tight against its body, eyes narrowed in what you assume is eagerness. You hold out a piece of meat with the calm you have perfected. The bird takes it with a quick snap of its beak, efficient and silent. There is no gratitude in the gesture, only expectation fulfilled. The next falcon behaves differently. This one stretches its neck toward you, examines the offering with visible suspicion, then hesitates, as though questioning your culinary judgment. Eventually, it accepts the piece with a gentle nip, as if agreeing to settle for mediocrity. You move on before it changes its mind. Further down the row, another bird clicks its beak impatiently. You hold out the food. It snatches the piece with a speed that always surprises you, the impact echoing against your glove. The bird then lifts its head high, feathers flaring in mild triumph. You resist the urge to bow. One falcon, a particularly noble-looking creature, with a streak of amber across its chest, takes its meal with calculated elegance. It barely touches the meat before lifting it away with a soft ripple of feathers. Its movements possess the kind of refinement your nobleman desperately wishes he could mimic. You watch it settle the piece delicately before tearing it apart with impressive enthusiasm. As you work your way down the line, you realize each bird has developed its own style of disdain. Some are subtle, a sideways glance, a slow blink, a half-hearted stretch before eating. Others are theatrical, wing flicks, head tilts, loud pointed chirps, little gestures that say, quite clearly, they would prefer something fresher, finer, or less touched by human hands. You, of course, remain undeterred. You have learned to navigate the delicate balance between bird preferences and your limited options. You take each reaction in stride, silently translating every nibble, snap and sigh into feedback that would make any chef question their career. When the final falcon receives its meal, a calm settles across the mews. The birds lower their wings, tuck their talons into more comfortable positions, and begin the steady work of tearing into their food. Feathers rustle, small bones crack, the sounds merge into a rhythmic, oddly soothing chorus that fills the room like a rustic symphony. You step back, tray now empty, and rest against one of the wooden beams. The falcons are occupied, their attention no longer fixed on you. The mews grow warm with the combined heat of their bodies and the rising sun filtering through the slats. Dust floats lazily in the air. The scent of raw meat gives way to the earthy mixture of feathers and straw once more. For a moment, the room feels almost peaceful. Watching the meat, you find yourself drifting into a kind of thoughtful calm. There is something strangely grounding about feeding creatures who care so little about your opinion. Their world operates on simple terms: hunger, movement, flight, patience when necessary, aggression when convenient. They are honest in ways people rarely are. You run your thumb along the edge of the empty tray. A small splinter catches your skin. You brush it away and consider, not for the first time, how much of this work is measured in moments like these. Quiet tasks performed with steady hands, accepting the bird's judgments without taking them personally. Holding still while they decide whether to bite, ignore, or tolerate you. You step forward again, checking each perch to ensure the birds eat safely. One falcon drops its piece. You lean down, retrieve it carefully, and offer it again. The bird hesitates, then accepts it with a subdued bite. Another falcon shakes its feathers vigorously, sending downy flakes drifting across the air like tiny snowflakes. They land on your sleeves, clinging as if determined to follow you wherever you go. You smile faintly, not because the moment is joyful, but because it is familiar. The kind of familiarity that shapes routine into something oddly comforting despite its demands. When the feeding is done, the falcons settle. Some bow their heads to rest. Others continue smoothing their feathers with slow, deliberate strokes of their beaks. The mews grow quiet again, filled only with the soft sound of birds content in their morning ritual. You gather the tray, your hands stained with the remnants of the task, and step back into the sunlight. The world outside feels cleaner somehow, though the scent of the mews still clings to you like a memory that refuses to fade. You carry the tray to the shed, rinse it with water drawn from the barrel, and set it aside to dry. The air cools against your skin, a welcome contrast to the warmth inside the mews. You take one more long, slow breath as you stand there, letting the breeze wash over you. Then you turn toward the next part of your day, knowing the birds will always be waiting for more. You linger for a moment outside the mews, letting the warmth of the sun settle into your sleeves before you gather the equipment again. The birds inside shift with the subtle impatience of creatures who know that training time is approaching. Their rustling feathers create a faint, restless whisper beneath the wooden beams, a reminder that no matter how much work you've already done, they expect still more. You pick up your glove, now softened slightly from the repairs earlier, and slip it onto your hand. The leather molds around your palm, carrying hints of wax and the faint tang of the morning's tasks. The jesses hang neatly from your belt, each one a small hope that today's training will be less dramatic than usual. You know better, but you've learned to let hope follow you anyway. Stepping back into the mews, you scan the line of perches. The falcons watch you with that familiar blend of curiosity and judgment, their bright eyes catching the sunlight like small unsettling jewels. You move toward the bird scheduled for today's exercises, a creature whose temperament swings between regal disinterest and theatrical rebellion. It stands tall on its perch, feathers smooth, posture perfect. If stillness could lie, this bird has mastered the art. You extend your gloved arm with a calm, professional composure that masks the little flare of dread in your stomach. The falcon stares at the glove for a long moment, as though examining a suspicious invitation. You keep your breathing steady, your stance relaxed, your expression neutral. The bird finally leans forward and steps onto your arm, talons sinking into the glove with a firm but familiar weight. The grip is not aggressive, just assertive, a declaration that if anyone here is to lose dignity today, it will not be the falcon. With measured steps, you lead the bird out of the mews and into the training field. The sun has climbed higher, casting a warm glow across the grass and softening the chill that clung to the early hours. A gentle breeze stirs the hem of your tunic, carrying the scent of earth, feathers, and distant hearth smoke. The falcon shifts its weight slightly, adjusting to the change in light, the shift in air, and perhaps preparing itself for the performance it will absolutely refuse to deliver. You stop near the familiar post where training often begins. The wooden stand is worn smooth by years of talons gripping its edge, though some of the grooves suggest the birds have attempted to reshape it to their liking. You position yourself carefully and lift your arm, signaling the falcon to hop onto the stand. It does not move. Instead, it tilts its head at an angle so sharp it seems almost comical, as though evaluating whether your request is worth the energy. You give the gentle cue again, a slight tilt of the wrist paired with a soft sound you've practiced enough to perfect. The falcon leans forward, blinks once, and proceeds to ignore you altogether. Patience settles into your shoulders like a heavy cloak. You exhale slowly, grounding yourself in the rhythm you always fall into during these sessions. You try again, adjusting your stance, offering the bird a subtle shift that invites cooperation. The falcon flicks a feather loose with a sharp shake of its wings, a gesture that feels more like commentary than compliance. Finally, with the exaggerated reluctance of a noble forced to participate in manual labour, the bird steps off your arm and onto the stand. You release a breath as though lowering a weight. The falcon pretends not to notice your relief. You step back a pace, letting the distance signal the next part of the training. The falcon remains perfectly still, staring into the distance as though contemplating philosophical matters far more important than your expectations. You give the whistle. A soft one, measured, clear. The bird does not move. You try again, slightly louder. The falcon blinks at a cloud, or perhaps at a memory. It certainly isn't acknowledging you. Your hands settle on your hips as you stand there in the open field, waiting for a creature who has decided that apathy is today's strategy. You nod slowly, as if in agreement with its choice, though inside you are quietly regretting every decision that led you to a job where you take orders from a bird. Eventually, the falcon hops once on the stand, a small shift, barely movement, but enough to show it is aware of the exercise, even if it does not care to participate. You give another cue, softer this time, a gentle lift of your hand. The bird's eyes narrow. Then, without warning, it spreads its wings in a sudden flourish, sending a small burst of air toward your face. Feathers shimmer in the sunlight as the wings rise high, catching the warmth in a display far more dramatic than necessary. You brace yourself, expecting flight. Instead, the falcon folds its wings again and resumes staring at absolutely nothing. You remind yourself to breathe. Training, for all its purpose, rarely resembles the graceful scenes embroidered on noble tapestries. Those images lie. They display falconers with immaculate gloves, perfect posture, and birds that obey as if trained by divine influence. In reality, you stand here coaxing a creature with more autonomy than any human servant, trying to convince it to move from one perch to another while it contemplates how little effort it wants to expend. You step a little farther away, giving the bird space, and raise your glove once again. This time, the falcon acknowledges you. It shifts forward, crouches slightly, and then, with the slow deliberation of someone remembering a chore they forgot to resent, it takes flight. The air stirs gently as the wings carry it upward. Not high, not fast, just enough. The bird circles once, body catching the sunlight in flashes of brown and gold. There is a brief moment where it looks truly magnificent, a living symbol of skill and nobility. Then it chooses boredom over brilliance. The falcon glides back down and lands on the nearest perch, not the one you indicated. You walk toward it with the same resigned calm you've learnt to develop. You offer your arm. The bird looks at it, looks at you, looks back at the arm, then hops onto the wrong part of your glove, the part that forces you to adjust your grip in an awkward, uncomfortable angle. You accept this as a victory. You try a few more exercises. Short flights, small hops, turning maneuvers that sometimes resemble training and sometimes look like the falcon is simply stretching. You keep your breathing slow even when the bird sends a gust of air into your face by flaring its wings at the worst possible moment. The falcon expresses its disinterest with subtlety. An occasional glance away, a dismissive flick of its feathers, a complete refusal to engage with anything that requires real effort. You coax, you encourage, you attempt authority. The bird chooses boredom every time. And yet, through the awkward pauses and the false starts, a rhythm emerges. Not a cooperative one, but one you can navigate. The bird's indifference becomes predictable. Its reluctance takes shape. You learn where to stand to make the exercise feel less offensive to it. You adjust your cues to a tone the falcon finds less irritating. Little by little, the session becomes functional. Not successful, but functional. The sun climbs higher as the training drifts on. Shadows shorten. The breeze warms. The field grows bright and quiet. You move with deliberate slowness, mindful of the bird's mood, careful not to push it too far. Every step you take reflects the long unspoken rule of falconry. The bird chooses the pace, and you choose the patience. By the time the session winds down, the falcon stands calmly on your arm again. Its wings fold neatly at its sides. The sharp lines of its body soften as it settles into stillness. For a moment, you catch the faintest hint of acceptance in its gaze. Not approval, not trust. Something much smaller, but present enough to feel like a reward. You lift your hand and stroke the edge of its wing, careful, respectful. The bird tolerates it. This is as close to triumph as the day allows. You turn back toward the mews, moving slowly across the field, with the falcon perched like a heavy crown on your arm. Your steps are steady, your breath calm, your shoulders relaxed in the way only repetition can teach. The bird remains quiet, feathers smooth, gaze alert. The wind carries the scent of straw and sun-warmed earth toward you. The mews wait in the distance, shadowed and familiar. You walk toward them, letting the rhythm of the day carry you forward. And the falcon, in its quiet, inscrutable way, allows itself to be carried too. You lead the falcon back toward the open field, the bird perched with stiff dignity on your arm, as though preparing for a ceremony it never agreed to attend. The ground beneath your boots is soft from the morning's dew, each step sinking slightly before rebounding with a faint squelch. The breeze has shifted, carrying with it the distant murmur of handlers, servants, and nobility assembling for the grand hunt your lord has been proclaiming since before sunrise. You walk toward the commotion with the quiet resignation of someone who already knows how this day will go. As you crest the low rise overlooking the gathering place, the full spectacle reveals itself. Horses stamp impatiently, their riders adorned in fabrics better suited for portraits than travel. Servants dart back and forth, adjusting saddles and passing out equipment with the frantic coordination of people who know better than to let nobility wait. The voices of lords and ladies carry across the air like a flock of brightly dressed geese competing for dominance. Your nobleman stands in the centre of it all, radiating pride with the confidence of someone who has read about hunts more often than participated in them. His cloak flutters dramatically in the wind, though the breeze is barely strong enough to lift a feather. He spots you immediately, raising an arm in a gesture so grand it could have been borrowed from a stage play. "You're late," he announces, though you arrive precisely when he instructed. You bow your head slightly, aware that any attempt at clarification would only inspire a speech about discipline, responsibility, or some other virtue he believes he embodies. He gestures at the falcon on your arm as though greeting an old adversary. The falcon responds by turning its head away with regal indifference. The nobleman mounts his horse with more flourish than balance, nearly tipping sideways before regaining his seat. He clears his throat loudly, hoping no one noticed. Several nobles pretend not to. You remain on foot, adjusting your grip on the bird as your lord launches into a speech about tradition, bravery, and the noble art of falconry. His audience nods dutifully. You suspect half of them are thinking about lunch. When the speech finally dissolves into scattered applause, the hunting party forms into a loose line. Horses shuffle, hounds bark, nobles posture. You position yourself near the edge, the falcon heavy on your arm, the second bird tethered nearby for later use. The restlessness of the animals mingles with the rustling wind, creating an atmosphere far more dramatic than the hunt deserves. The signal is given. The line moves forward. The ground changes almost immediately, shifting from firm grass to uneven patches of marsh and loose stones. You step carefully, trying to avoid the puddles, whose depth varies from surface ripple to ankle-deep catastrophe. Your nobleman calls out instructions from horseback, none of which apply to your situation on the ground. He raises his arm and gestures majestically toward a distant cluster of trees. "This is where the action begins," he proclaims. You doubt it. The trees look innocent, even bored. Nevertheless, the falcon on your arm tenses as though sensing an opportunity. You lift the bird slightly, waiting for your lord to give the release command. He waits far too long, savouring the moment, raising his voice for dramatic effect rather than practical timing. The falcon grows impatient. You can feel the shift in its muscles, the subtle adjustments of talons pressing into your glove. Then, finally, the nobleman throws his hand into the air, as if summoning divine intervention. You give the real command, a small practiced movement paired with your soft cue. The falcon launches. Its wings unfold with sharp precision, sending a gust of air across your face. It rises quickly, cutting through the sky with elegant strokes. For a breath, it looks exactly like the tapestries promised. Then it veers sharply left, ignoring both the nobleman's intended target and the direction you trained it for. A cluster of nobles gasp theatrically, as though the bird has performed a breathtaking, acrobatic feat, rather than simply deciding it has better things to do. Your nobleman wheels his horse around to follow the falcon, shouting vague instructions that have no bearing on what is actually happening. You jog after him, dodging puddles, horses, servants, and an overly enthusiastic hound. The uneven ground grabs at your boots, threatening to steal them with every step. Your breath comes slowly, deliberately, matching the pace of someone who knows running will only make your misery more noticeable. The falcon arcs through the sky with increasing independence, as though savouring the opportunity to demonstrate how little it cares for human planning. Your nobleman finally spots the bird circling above a patch of low brush and signals for you to approach. You quicken your pace, careful not to slip on the wet earth. The falcon swoops downward, brushing near the ground before soaring upward again. It is hunting, but not what the nobleman intended. He blames you immediately, shouting across the field with the volume of someone hoping the entire countryside hears him. Control your bird. You refrain from pointing out that control is a generous word when dealing with a creature whose favourite pastime seems to be defying expectations. Instead, you lift your arm, calling the falcon back with the strongest signal you can give without shouting. It circles once, twice, then continues its own agenda. The nobles watch with a mixture of amusement and polite confusion. Your nobleman fumes, puffing like a kettle about to boil. He mutters about technique, obedience, and how falconry requires a delicate balance only men of true refinement can achieve. His horse shifts beneath him in a way that suggests it disagrees. Eventually, the falcon loses interest in its personal adventure. It cuts a wide arc through the air and dives toward you with the grace of a creature that enjoys dramatic entrances. You brace your arm. The impact is swift but practiced. The talons clamp down with firm certainty. You absorb the weight with a soft grunt that you hope no one notices. Your nobleman notices the return, but not the details. He waves dismissively and declares to the gathering, "A fine display, perfect control." Several nobles nod, either fooled or politely pretending to be. The second falcon waits for its turn. You untether it and prepare for another round. This bird is quieter, more observant, but no more obedient than the first. When it launches, the motion is smooth, controlled, predictable, for exactly 3 seconds. Then it veers sharply upward, climbing until it becomes a tiny silhouette against the pale sky. Your nobleman begins another speech, praising its technique, before realizing the bird is not coming back. His praise turns into blame with impressive speed. You try the recall command, no response. You try again. The falcon glides farther away, as if trying to escape your career entirely. What follows is the part of the hunt you despise, the wandering, the calling, the hope that the bird remembers where home is. You walk across soggy ground, offering apologies to every noble whose boots or horse were briefly inconvenienced by the falcon's choices. Your nobleman rides proudly behind you, loudly critiquing each step you take, even though he has not dismounted once. After what feels like a small eternity, the falcon circles back on its own terms. It lands with an air of casual triumph, as though the entire ordeal was merely a break it needed. Your arm aches from bracing for the weight. Your boots are wet. Your knees carry the subtle sting of cold seeping through the leather. Your nobleman claps you on the back, declaring the hunt a roaring success. He does this while completely ignoring the mud now smeared across your tunic. The nobles applaud politely, mostly out of habit. Horses shuffle, hounds bark, the wind stirs the leaves overhead. And you, standing in the midst of it all, with two indignant birds and boots full of water, feel the familiar truth settle quietly into your bones. A medieval falconer is blamed for everything except the few moments that actually go well. The party begins to disperse, equipment is gathered, horses turn toward the manor path. Your nobleman rides ahead, already planning the exaggerated tale he will recount at dinner. You follow behind, the falcon shifting on your arm, with the smug calm of creatures who believe they performed flawlessly. And perhaps in their own inscrutable way, they did. The hunting party disperses slowly, leaving behind a churned patchwork of hoof prints, muddy depressions, and trampled grass. You linger at the edge of the field, adjusting your grip on the falcon, as the last clusters of nobles drift toward the manor like brightly coloured birds flocking home. The falcons on your arm shift with the weary confidence of creatures who believe the day's demands have been met, even if yours have not. Your nobleman gives a final flourish of his cloak before riding ahead, offering you neither instruction nor thanks, just the vague impression that you should follow and somehow anticipate his needs before he thinks them. You watch him vanish over a small rise in the land, his silhouette briefly heroic against the sky, before he dips out of sight. Your boots are already wet, so you set off across the uneven ground without bothering to avoid the puddles. The soil yields beneath each step, making a soft sucking sound that feels a little too eager. The falcon's talons tighten on your glove, as though trying to keep its balance, even though you are the one slipping on treacherous patches of earth. The land stretches before you in a slow, rolling sprawl of fields and pockets of woodland. The air is thick with the scent of damp grass, crushed by hooves and feet alike. Somewhere beyond the trees, water trickles with the faint, murmuring voice of a narrow stream. The world is green and open and undeniably beautiful. The sort of beauty that would be refreshing if it weren't determined to swallow at least one of your boots. You step into a patch of seemingly solid ground that immediately proves it has been conspiring against you. Your foot sinks halfway into cold mud, the kind that grips like a handshake from someone who refuses to let go. You shift your weight and pull, feeling the mud resist with an almost affectionate persistence. The falcon on your arm flicks its wings once, unimpressed with the delay. You tug harder. The mud relents with a wet, slurping sigh, and you continue onward with the dignity of someone pretending nothing embarrassing just happened. A small stand of trees rises ahead, branches bending in the breeze with the slow, deliberate motion of old bones shifting. You walk toward them, hoping for firmer soil, only to find another set of challenges lurking beneath the leaves. Twigs snap underfoot, roots jut out at odd angles, ready to catch a careless boot. The falcon lifts its head, scanning the canopy with the cold interest of a creature who is above such earthly inconveniences. As you make your way beneath the branches, the light dims. The canopy filters the sun, turning it into soft patches of shifting gold on the forest floor. The air grows cooler. The earthy smell of leaf litter mixes with the sharp tang of evergreen needles and damp bark. It should be peaceful. It almost is. But the ground here undulates unpredictably, rising and falling in small mounds that force your steps into a cautious rhythm. The falcon on your arm shifts again, clearly annoyed that the world refuses to flatten itself for your convenience. Another bird tethered at your side adjusts its wings with the restless air of a creature debating whether to take flight without permission. You tighten your grip on the leather strap, reminding it gently who is attached to whom. Beyond the woods, the land opens into a small expanse of boggy terrain. The grass grows taller here, waving in uneven tufts that disguise the deeper pools beneath. You approach with the resigned understanding that your boots are doomed no matter how carefully you proceed. The falcon watches the bog with interest, as though viewing a theatrical performance whose plot is predictable yet irresistible. You test the ground with the tip of your boot. It wobbles. You step forward anyway. The mud gives way instantly, swallowing your foot with a wet sound that feels like the earth chuckling. You inhale slowly, centering yourself, and take another step. This time, it is your other boot that sinks. Your pace becomes a careful dance between shifting ground and inevitable humiliation. The falcon remains calm, almost too calm. You suspect it enjoys these moments, safe on its perch while you navigate a landscape that seems determined to make you reconsider your profession. You lift one foot, the mud clinging stubbornly, before finally releasing it with a slurp that might as well be applause. You make it through the bog with both boots still in your possession, though the mud now marks you up to the ankles in uneven streaks. The falcon gives a soft chuffing sound, which you choose to interpret as respect rather than amusement. The air grows fresher as you climb the small slope leading away from the bog. A breeze picks up, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and distant smoke from a cottage you can't quite see. Birds unrelated to your responsibilities flit through the sky, their quick movements taunting the falcons, who eye them with disdain and a hint of jealousy. You continue along a narrow path bordered by low hedges. The earth here is firmer, cracked by the sun, but softened by patches of grass. Your shoulders relax. The rhythm of your steps steadies. The falcons settle. The world for a fleeting moment feels manageable. Then the path curves sharply around a low hill, and the breeze brings with it a sudden unmistakable scent. Wet feathers. Not the dry, dusty smell you've come to accept, but something heavier, richer, unmistakably damp. You glance down at the falcon on your arm. Its feathers puff outward in the faintest display of disapproval, as though it too has caught the scent and decided someone else should take responsibility for it. Another step reveals the culprit. A small dip in the path hides a shallow puddle of water, murky and edged with reeds that glisten from recent rainfall. You navigate around it with exaggerated care, mindful of your already strained boots. The falcon shifts, leaning slightly to counterbalance your movement. Its weight anchors you, stabilizing your stride, even as the path slopes unevenly beneath your feet. Beyond the reeds, the landscape opens into a field, dotted with clusters of rocks and low shrubs. The ground is uneven, but mercifully dry. The sun settles warmly on your back. The falcons remain perched, with regal disinterest, their feathers stirring lightly in the wind. You continue forward, letting the field's vast calmness stretch around you like a soft, rustic cloak. A rabbit darts across your path. The falcon's head jerks sharply, eyes locked on the movement. You tighten your grip, murmuring a quiet reassurance you know it will ignore. The rabbit disappears into the undergrowth. The falcon relaxes with a low, disgruntled chirp. You keep walking. Not far ahead, the land dips gently toward another patch of woodland. The trees there sway with a slow, rhythmic grace, their leaves shimmering like whispers. You approach the shade, feeling the cool air reach out to greet you. It carries the scent of crushed pine needles and damp earth. The falcon's wings twitch, adjusting to the change in temperature. As you step beneath the canopy, the world grows quieter. The sounds of the field fade, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves overhead. Sunlight trickles through the gaps, creating pockets of brightness that drift across the ground as the branches sway. Your boots leave faint impressions in the soil. The falcon follows your movements with mild suspicion, talons gripping steadily, wings tucked close to its body. A branch snaps somewhere deeper in the woods. A squirrel chatters in alarm. The falcon straightens with immediate interest. You hold firm, steadying your arm, guiding the bird's focus away from impulses that would lead to more chasing, more apologies, more unpredictable detours. The forest eventually thins, light spills back into the world. You emerge onto a path that bends toward the distant manor, the roofs just visible through the haze of warm afternoon air. The falcons shift with the soft rustle of feathers, settling back into comfort. Your boots, heavy with mud, carry the weight of the land's challenges with each step. The world around you is undeniably lovely. Green fields, quiet woods, soft breezes, the occasional curious rustle of wildlife. But the loveliness hides a relentless truth. This landscape has no interest in making life easy for a falconer. You walk on, The birds perched like small critics, the land stretching endlessly ahead, demanding your endurance, one uneven step at a time. You take a steady breath as the landscape finally begins to level out, the manor appearing faintly through the wavering haze of afternoon light. The fields behind you fade into a patchwork of green and brown, stitched with the memory of every uneven step you've taken today. Your boots feel heavier than they should, carrying half the countryside in their creases. The falcon on your arm shifts with the subtle authority of a noble resting on the back of a servant they assume exists solely for that purpose. Its talons press through the glove with their usual quiet insistence, not painful, just present enough to remind you who dictates the pace of the walk. The bird gives a small shake of its feathers, sending a faint rustle through the warm air. The sound settles around you like a sigh, a gentle, feathery exhalation that marks the end of the day's exertions. It has decided its work is done. You do not get the same luxury. The air carries a mellow warmth as the sun leans lower in the sky. Light glints along the edges of leaves, turning the world soft and golden, as though trying to lull every creature into a calm afternoon daze. You step carefully over a shallow rut in the path, guiding the falcon's perch with the ease of long practice. The bird gives a small, regal chirp, perhaps satisfaction, perhaps a reminder that you should steady your stride for its comfort. Grass bends gently beneath your boots as you walk. Each step creates a soft, rhythmic crunch, the kind you settle into without thinking. The falcon's weight matches the rhythm, rocking slightly with each movement, feathers brushing lightly against your shoulder whenever the wind shifts. The two of you move through the field like an odd pair of wanderers bound together by duty, patience, and mutual irritations neither of you choose to acknowledge out loud. The breeze picks up again, carrying the smell of warm earth, crushed grass, and the faint musk of feathers. You can taste the air in your throat, thick with the lingering humidity of late daylight. Above you, clouds drift lazily, their shapes stretched like wool pulled thin. You tilt your head back, letting the soft glow of the sky wash over your field-tired eyes. The falcon follows your gaze for a moment, then decides the sky holds nothing worth pursuing today. A single horse trails far ahead of you, your nobleman returning at an unnecessarily dramatic pace, cloak fluttering behind him like a banner declaring his triumph. From a distance, he looks heroic in the way only silhouettes can manage. You know that once he turns and his cloak settles, the illusion will break. For now, he rides on, likely thinking of how he'll embellish today's events for dinner conversation. You adjust your grip on the glove, feeling the falcon's footing shift in response. The bird leans slightly forward, head tilted as if scanning the horizon for one last inconvenience to interrupt the walk. But nothing stirs. The world has quieted, the kind of stillness that settles after a long stretch of commotion. Even the hounds, fading into the distance, no longer bark. The endless tasks of morning and afternoon dissolve into a single, gentle silence. You walk past a stand of tall grass. The blades sway like slow marionettes, brushing against your tunic with a soft hiss. The falcon lifts its wings a fraction, adjusting to the movement, then tucks them neatly again. You sense its mood, calm now, but not because of you. Because the bird has decided the day owes it nothing further. It rests with the serene entitlement of a creature that knows it will be fed, housed, cleaned, and doted on, no matter how little effort it contributes. Your boots scrape across patches of dry soil, pebbles scatter lightly beneath your steps, and the low thud of your own tired heartbeat seems to echo faintly in your ears. You feel the weight of fatigue wrap gently around your shoulders, not heavy enough to crush you, just firm enough to keep you aware of every muscle you've used since dawn. Sunlight settles on your back in a warm sheet. The falcon, sensing the temperature, ruffles its feathers again, loosening small tufts of down that drift across the air like dandelion fluff. One lands on your forearm. You blow it away gently, careful not to disturb the bird perched above it. The path slopes slightly upward, pulling the weight of your boots backward with every step. You lean forward to counter it, moving with the slow determination of someone following a routine carved deep into bone. The falcon presses its toes into your glove for balance, each talon creating a faint pressure point that keeps you attentive. Your steps continue steady and measured, a rhythm grown from necessity rather than choice. As you crest the small rise, you pause, swallowing a breath of the warm air. The manor lies just ahead, its stone walls tinted with the amber hues of late afternoon. Smoke drifts lazily from the kitchen chimney. The faint sound of servants preparing for evening stirs in the distance, wood clattering, voices murmuring, metal clinking softly. Everyday sounds, familiar sounds. The falcon watches the manor too, head tilting with the curious scrutiny of a noble guest, deciding whether the accommodations meet its standards. You shift your weight slightly to relieve your tired arm. The bird responds with a pointed look, as though reminding you not to move without its permission. You give it a silent apology, one it ignores. You continue the descent toward the manor grounds. The slope encourages longer strides, and the earth grows firmer beneath your boots, the mud finally releasing its hold in favour of drier soil. The falcon rides the movement with the ease of a seasoned traveller, body swaying gently with each step. Its feathers brush softly against your sleeve, a delicate sound that melts into the hush of the fading day. A small breeze curls around you as you reach the bottom of the slope, bringing with it the faint scents of cooking herbs and charcoal from the manor kitchens. You breathe it in, letting the warmth in your lungs dissolve some of the day's stiffness. The falcon breathes in as well, not audibly, just a subtle expansion of its chest, as if evaluating whether the wind carries anything edible. The manor path is smoother, worn by countless feet, hooves and wheels. Your stride becomes easier, your shoulders loosen. The falcon settles more deeply, its weight now familiar, almost comforting in its constancy. The quiet hum of the late afternoon settles around you, the kind of hush that grows soft and thick before evening fully arrives. A few servants pass you on the path. They offer polite nods, some curious glances at the bird perched regally on your arm. You nod back, though your eyes stay forward, guiding your tired steps toward the mews. The falcon barely acknowledges the passers-by. It is done with interacting today. It saves its attention for the important matter of resting comfortably without falling off your arm. As you reach the shadows cast by the outer wall of the manor, the temperature dips slightly. The falcon adjusts again, with a soft rustle, feathers shifting to trap the lingering warmth. You feel the subtle motion travel through your glove, up your wrist, settling deep into your forearm, like a final reminder of the day's demands. You follow the narrow path that leads toward the mews. The building sits in its usual quiet posture, half in shadow, half in sun. Wooden beams holding both the history and the odour of countless days just like this one. You approach its doorway with the careful steps of someone nearing the end of a long ritual. Not joyful, not dramatic, simply necessary. The falcon lifts its head as you slow to a stop, as though acknowledging the return to its private domain. You angle your arm toward its perch. The bird steps off with the casual grace of a monarch, disembarking from its carriage. It settles onto the wooden beam, talons finding familiar grooves. Its feathers smooth themselves with practiced efficiency. You flex your hand, feeling the relief of the glove loosening at last. Your arm tingles from the release of weight. The falcon preens once, twice, then stares at you with the calm satisfaction of someone who considers the entire journey to have been your responsibility alone. You breathe in the warm, feather-thick air inside the mews. A quiet rustling surrounds you as other birds settle. The last of the sunlight slips through the slats, laying thin, golden lines across the straw-covered floor. The rhythm of your walk still echoes faintly in your body. A steady beat, a soft resignation, a familiar calm. And as the door behind you creaks shut, you realise that the journey home with a tired falcon, heavy, demanding, utterly indifferent, has become the closest thing to peace your days ever offer. You linger in the doorway for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the subdued light inside the mews. The last edges of day stretch in through the wooden slats, drawing pale gold lines across the floor that shimmer faintly on scattered feathers. The warm twilight hum outside blends into a steady chorus of insects waking for the night, their voices weaving through the air with a calm that contrasts sharply with your own exhaustion. The falcons rustle on their perches as you step inside, each one shifting with the faint self-importance of creatures returning to their private chambers. Their wings give soft, minimal flutters, just enough to remind you that even in their quiet moments, they expect the world to adjust around them. You slide the door closed behind you, letting the familiar scent of straw, dust, and feathers wrap around you like a heavy but unavoidable cloak. The mews hold their own rhythm at this hour, not the restless clatter of morning, nor the demanding intensity of midday. Evening draws everything toward a slower pulse, a gentle settling, a reluctant stilling. You move into this rhythm with practiced ease, each step softened by the comfort of routine and the undeniable fatigue that clings to your bones. You begin by straightening the straw along the floor. The hay crackles softly beneath your hands as you gather and redistribute it, smoothing the uneven patches left by the day's movements. The floorboards creak lightly beneath your weight, the sound blending with the muffled coos and chirps of the birds settling above you. Every now and then, a falcon gives a soft, irritated click when stray straw brushes a talon, as if offended that the universe has placed debris in its personal space. You smile faintly, though tiredly, and continue the task. Your fingers brush against loose feathers tucked into the straw, small downy wisps and larger plumes that gleam faintly in the dim light. You gather them carefully, tossing them into a small basket you keep near the door. Some falconers use such feathers to mend equipment. You keep them mostly because leaving them scattered leads to unnecessary drama from the birds, whose sense of order is rigid in ways you've long stopped understanding. Once the floor is straightened, you check each perch. The wooden beams are worn smooth, shaped by years of talons gripping and shifting. You run your hand along each one, pressing lightly, ensuring the wood is secure. A few of the metal rings used for tethering need tightening. You adjust them with a small tool, the soft clink of metal echoing faintly against the walls. The falcons watch every movement with sharp, unblinking eyes. Their gazes follow you with an intensity that would be unnerving if you weren't so used to it. One bird tilts its head, studying you as though trying to determine whether you deserve its cooperation tonight. You offer a quiet sound, a calm murmur meant to reassure. The bird responds with a low, throaty chirp, somewhere between tolerance and warning. You continue onward. Your next task is to inspect the equipment stored along the shelves, the hoods, the tiny buckles, the jesses and leashes, the spare straps. Evening is the best time to check them, before the dampness of night creeps in, before fatigue turns careful fingers clumsy. You lift each hood gently, feeling the texture of the leather beneath your skin. Some are still supple, some stiffening at the edges, each one carrying the faint scent of oil, feathers, and air warmed by the day's sunlight. You adjust a seam here, tighten a stitch there. Nothing dramatic, just the small maintenance that keeps tomorrow's chaos manageable. Behind you, a falcon shifts suddenly, the powerful beat of its wings stirring the straw at your feet. The air ripples with the movement, warm and feather-scented. You turn just in time to see the bird hop in irritation, its talons clicking sharply against the wood. You pause, hands stilling, letting the bird release its displeasure before stepping closer. You know this one well. It has boundaries more rigid than a noble's pride. You approach with measured calm, your presence respectful, your hands steady. The bird flares its wings, the briefest display of dominance, then settles again, feathers smoothing into place. You wait a moment longer before checking the tether at its perch. The knot is secure, the leather intact. Easy, you murmur, voice low and even. The falcon turns its head away in a show of dignified indifference. The twilight outside deepens, turning the slats in the wooden walls into narrow strips of orange and rose. The insect chorus grows stronger, joined by the faint sounds of distant voices drifting from the manor, laughter from the kitchen, footsteps along the courtyard, the clatter of pots as evening meals are prepared for those whose roles do not involve feathers and talons. You continue your rounds, settling into the comfort of necessary work. The birds begin to relax around you, their movements slower now. Some tuck their heads beneath their wings, ready for the long rest. Others simply close their eyes halfway, the way falcons do when they want to pretend they are ignoring you while still monitoring every breath you take. You check the water bowls next, a task more delicate than it seems. Falcons do not like being disturbed when they are deciding to accept sleep, and any noise near their perches is treated with suspicion. You lift the bowls gently, moving with the quiet care of someone handling glass in a room full of critics. The clear water ripples softly as you carry the bowls back from the small barrel near the wall. As you pour fresh water, the subtle sound echoes in the stillness, an oddly soothing sound in the quiet enclosure. One bird stirs as the water splashes lightly. Its sharp eyes follow the movement, then soften as the dim light reflects off the surface. You set the bowl back down with a slight bow of your head, as though presenting a humble offering. The falcon accepts this gesture with the faintest lowering of its wings. You step back to admire the small order you've managed to create. The straw lies even. The equipment is aligned. The birds are calm, preened, and settled on their perches in various attitudes of half-sleep. The mews have embraced the evening stillness, becoming a quiet sanctuary, despite their lingering aroma of feathers and the persistent undertone of bird droppings. You breathe it in, letting the familiar scent settle into your lungs like a reluctant companion. Your final task is to dim the space further. You lower the heavy cloth panels along the outer walls, softening the remaining slivers of fading sunlight. Shadows deepen across the room, blending with the warm twilight glow. The birds shift one last time, adjusting themselves into comfortable positions, their silhouettes merging with the wooden beams in quiet harmony. The mews have grown hushed now. Only the soft rustle of wings and the occasional faint click of a beak breaks the silence. The world outside continues its evening rituals, but here time moves slower. You rest your hand on the wooden frame of the nearest perch, letting your fingers feel the smoothness of the beam worn down by years of work and the birds who rely on it. You draw in one more long, steady breath, the scent of straw, the warmth of feathers, the cool whisper of nighttime edging closer, the quiet hum of insects weaving through the dusk. These are the textures of your evening. You move toward the door, stepping carefully to avoid startling the birds, your boots brushing softly against the floor. The gentle rhythm of your steps blends into the room's quiet. You reach for the door latch, pausing a moment to let the final sounds settle. A faint ruffle, a soft exhale, a small shift of talons against wood. Then you slip outside into the cooling air, leaving the mews behind in their slow drift into nightfall. The falcons rest, the world darkens, and your day, heavy with feathers and small resignations, finally begins to soften. The night air settles cool and soft against your skin as you leave the mews behind. A faint glow lingers along the horizon as twilight deepens, turning the sky into a layered wash of violet and indigo. The hum of insects rises in the growing darkness, steady and hypnotic, while the distant clatter from the manor signals the bustle of evening routines unfolding within its walls. You follow the familiar stone path that leads toward the main hall, boots brushing lightly across the ground, each step echoing the weight of the day. The manor's torches flicker in their iron brackets, casting restless shadows across the courtyard. You pass under the archway, feeling the warmth of the fires inside brush against the cooling night. Servants hurry along with bowls, pitchers, and cloth-covered trays, weaving between one another with the silent coordination of people who know their roles all too well. Their glances skim past you, some sympathetic, some indifferent. You carry the faint scent of straw and feathers with you. They recognize it immediately. A steward gestures for you to enter the Lord's Hall. You step through the doorway into a space alive with noise and warmth. The fire in the great hearth crackles with a steady, comforting roar, throwing sparks upward like fireflies caught in a gust of heat. Tapestries, stiff with age, hang along the walls, depicting idealized hunts where noblemen stand proudly beside perfectly obedient falcons. You know those hunts never happened. You also know that pointing this out would not be appreciated. Your lord sits at the high table, surrounded by his favoured companions. Platters of food lie untouched before him, likely for decoration as much as nourishment. His cloak drapes elegantly across his chair, arranged with the strategic care of someone who wants to appear accidentally dignified. He spots you approaching and waves you over with exaggerated enthusiasm, as though you are the missing actor in a performance only he understands. You take your place slightly behind him, close enough to serve as an audience, but far enough to avoid being dragged into the heart of the conversation. The nobleman leans back, swirling the contents of his cup with a flourish, then launches into yet another tale of his so-called heroic exploits. "Ah, you should have seen it," he begins, gesturing broadly to capture the attention of anyone within reach. "A magnificent display. The bird soared higher than any man has witnessed, and at my signal it struck the target with flawless precision." You murmur the expected agreement, a quiet sound meant to reinforce his confidence without encouraging more embellishment. It rarely works. He continues unabated. "The creature knew my intent before I even gave the command," he says, "a sign of true mastery. Only the finest falconers could inspire such loyalty." You fight the urge to glance toward the window, where the silhouettes of the actual birds rest in their perches, undoubtedly preening themselves with the smug satisfaction of creatures who have never listened to a single command in their lives. Instead, you nod once more, letting your expression remain neutral and respectful. The nobleman leans forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a profound secret. "Most men cannot manage these creatures," he says, tapping the table for emphasis. "They require a firm hand, a sharp eye, a noble spirit. You keep your breathing steady, though a small breath of fatigue escapes your chest. It blends into the background noise, unnoticed." He continues spinning his tales, each one grander, less believable, and more deeply rooted in his own imagination than the last. In one, a falcon supposedly circled the sky for an hour, awaiting his command like a loyal sentinel. In another, the bird allegedly returned with such precise timing that onlookers applauded in awe. Every detail is polished to a shine, free of mud, misbehaviour, or the stubborn independence that defines living falcons. His companions lean in, captivated by the spectacle of his voice rather than the truth behind the words. One offers a polite laugh, another raises a cup in appreciation. You stand quietly behind them, the unspoken witness to the countless ways reality has been stretched, reshaped, and tucked neatly into a story that flatters the teller above all else. Your lord shifts the tale suddenly, now recounting a moment where he faced danger with unshakable bravery. According to him, the falcon swooped low to defend him from a wild creature, a beast so fearsome that none dared approach. The bird, of course, allegedly acted with perfect obedience, striking the beast exactly as he commanded. You keep your posture still, though your mind recalls the actual event. A startled falcon losing patience, swooping in a panic, and leaving your lord stumbling over a tree root, while shouting commands the bird ignored with impressive clarity. You remember the apologetic murmurs you offered afterward, not because you believed you were at fault, but because your lord needed someone to blame. Now, in the warmth of the hall, surrounded by food, drink, and admiring faces, he retells the incident as a heroic triumph, reshaping chaos into legend. You listen without interruption, offering the occasional hum of agreement, because this is part of your role. Falconer, handler, caretaker, and now audience member to stories that have been polished smooth by overuse. The fire crackles behind you. Its warmth seeps into your back, loosening the stiffness in your shoulders from a long day's work. The soft glow from the flames illuminates the nobleman's face as he gestures dramatically, casting shadows that dance along the walls like actors in their own silent play. His companions are enthralled. You suspect some are enjoying the performance more than the content. He raises his cup again, this time lifting it toward the window. "To the finest birds in the realm," he declares loudly, though he has not seen any of them since morning. Loyal, fearless, unmatched. You swallow a small laugh, turning it into a quiet exhale through your nose. The falcons outside, who likely dozed through most of the day's excitement, would be stunned to learn they are being praised for loyalty. You imagine them blinking in confusion, then promptly ignoring everything. Your nobleman begins a new story, this one involving a rival lord and a falcon that outperformed all others. He describes the moment as though it were witnessed by an entire court, though the only people present at the time were you, the rival falconer, and a horse who walked away halfway through. But in the version he tells tonight, nobles gasped, servants cheered, and even the other lord admitted defeat with grace. You lean your weight subtly from one foot to the other, adjusting your tired stance. The hall's warmth combines with the steady drone of your lord's voice, making your eyelids feel heavier, but you keep them open, maintaining the attentive expression that experience has taught you is necessary. Eventually, the nobleman turns to you directly, eyes gleaming with the anticipation of drawing you into his tale. "And you," he says, "you saw it all, didn't you?" You incline your head slightly, offering the kind of diplomatic nod that neither confirms nor denies anything. It is enough. He smiles, interpreting your silence as agreement, and returns to his storytelling with renewed vigour. The hall slowly quiets as servants finish their tasks and move toward the outer rooms. The flicker of the fire grows softer. Laughter fades into low murmurs. Still, your lord's voice continues, smooth, confident, unwavering. You remain near him, absorbing each embellished detail with the patience born from years of practice. The falcons outside, nestled in their straw, no doubt sleep peacefully as they unknowingly become symbols of obedience and grandeur they have never displayed. You let out a long, quiet breath. The fire's warmth tugs at your exhaustion. The nobleman's stories stretch on, unabashed and extravagant, and you, standing in the soft glow of the hearth, continue your role, the silent keeper of truths no one here wishes to hear. The tales grow softer as the night deepens, each one drifting farther into fantasy. You listen, nod, and wait for the moment when the stories finally exhaust even the teller. Until then, you hold your place, acknowledging each heroic flourish with the same calm resignation you have mastered in every corner of this life. You climb the narrow stairs with the careful slowness of someone who has learned every squeak by heart. The corridor smells of smoke and stew, a wholesome combination that might be comforting if the thought of tomorrow did not loom like another round of feathers and petty indignities. A torch guttering in its iron sconce throws soft, reluctant light across tapestries whose colours have faded to patient size. You pass the steward's door, where boots are brushed and gossip is traded, and you move on toward the small room allotted to you. Not a chamber, strictly speaking, but shelter enough for a body that has become practiced at resting on uneven surfaces. The bed is waiting with the unapologetic lumpiness of medieval engineering, straw packed into a leather sack, stitched inexpertly and crowned with a blanket that has seen too many winters. It is not designed for comfort. It was designed to keep you from complete collapse, which after today is an achievement in itself. You drop onto it with the careful forgiveness of someone who knows a mattress will not retaliate. The straw sighs under you, adjusting like a slow audience conceding applause. Night in the manor is a chorus of small sounds, none loud enough to be alarming, all steady enough to keep you from drifting too deeply. The hearth in the great hall burns lower now, sending a faint trail of warmth through the stone. Far off, the string of servants' footsteps marks the cadence of finishing tasks. A dog barks twice, and then remembers to be noble about it. Somewhere down the corridor, a cup clinks as it is set aside. The latrine door closes with a solid creak that feels more like punctuation than departure. Each sound is ordinary, the good kind of ordinary that reassures you the world keeps turning, even if your role within it is small and slightly ridiculous. Feathers cling to your garments in a way that should be illegal. You peel off the glove and roll the leather carefully, folding it on the rough wooden chair by the bed. The glove still smells faintly of wax and the bird's invisible perfume, the warm, oily scent of plumage and the faint tang of meat. You set it aside, a relic of the day's engagements, and slide your hands beneath the blanket. The linen is cool against your wrists, bringer of temporary solace. Your mind wanders, not in big arcs, but in tiny burr-like thoughts that stick. The nobleman's speech about loyalty, the falcon's precise little bite at the knuckle, the way the mud seemed to have an opinion about your footwear. You count them as one might count sheep, a list of minor humiliations that, strung together, make the story of a day. They are not painful memories so much as proof of occupation. They confirm you have been useful in a way that is half craftsmanship, half public relations, for a man who prefers credit to work. Sleep arrives in small, polite increments. You doze, and the dream that finds you at first is soft and grainy, like a tapestry unravelling. You are in a field where falcons float above like embroidered motifs. They hover perfectly still, their wings painted on tapestry cloth, never needing to exert themselves. They look spectacular and obedient, and entirely fictional. For a moment you savour the image. No mud, no broken jesses, no apologising to men who have never touched a glove. The dream is deliciously false, and that falseness makes it comfortable. The dream shifts without violence. You are back in the mews, only the walls here are polished, the straw immaculate, and every hood sits in tidy rows as if prepared for a royal inspection. The falcons preen in choreography, a ballet performed to an audience that cannot see the strings. You reach out to pat one, and your hand meets feather and cloud. It is soft enough to make you smile, even in sleep. This sleepy theatre lets you believe, briefly, that falconry is an art practiced by saints rather than by people who stitch by candlelight. Your rest is delicate. Sound pulls you like a small tide. A muffled laugh from the hall rolls down the stairs and pulls a half-awake smile from you. You drift again. The thin bed does not allow deep complacency. Instead, it offers a series of shallow pauses, each one a pocket of slack in which your brain catalogues the day's minutiae. You remember, as if storing evidence, the precise way a falcon tilted its head the last time you trained it, the way its talons found a groove in the glove that you had not noticed. Small observations accumulate until they feel like a record. At one point you awake to the scent of rain in the air, fresh and almost apologetic. Through a slit in the shutters, silver ribbons of water tilt the landscape into soft clarity. It seems likely rain will come. Rain has the habit of arriving the night after mud has already made itself at home on your boots. You allow a dry, ironic laugh to escape, then sink back with the comfort of someone who has learned to find humour where solace is thin. Your dreams slip into a different register as the night deepens. They take on the tone of the world you serve, not cruel, not tender, merely pragmatic. You dream of hoods in ordered rows, of jesses hung to dry like pennants, of glove leather softened by beeswax, and the patient oil of your hands. In the dream, you move among them, not rushed but purposeful, stitching seams with a clarity that daylight rarely allows. The dream hands are steady. The stitches are tight. The falcons, for once, preen in contentment rather than plotting small acts of offended independence. You sleep and wake intermittently. The night's small duties continue to puncture the quiet. A distant voice instructs a late errand. A candle flares and then steadies. A child squeaks in some other wing of the manor, practicing sounds that will eventually become language. You roll onto your side, feeling the blanket shift. Like a small wave, the straw pokes in places, making its presence known. You shift again, redistributing discomfort into tolerable angles. Sleep is not a single surrender here. It is a series of temporary relents. Occasionally, a snatch of memory slips into the margin between sleep and waking that is sharper, edged with the dry humour you employed during daylight hours. You imagine the nobleman flouncing in his chair, declaring that falcons understand loyalty because he once read it in a book. You picture the birds themselves, small sovereigns on their perch, trading scornful glances and ruffled feathers when a particularly ornate glove is presented. The image is oddly comforting. Absurdity is easier to accept when framed as theatre. There is a hollow, restful pause when the manor settles into its slowest hour. The great clock has long since given up pretending to be steady. The watchman paces once, then twice, the rhythm as reliable as a heartbeat. In those moments, nothing needs your attention. You close your eyes and choose not to catalogue small injustices. For the first time since dawn, your breath matches the slow, steady rhythm of the house itself. Sleep tugs at you softly after that, drawing you toward a quieter, simpler place. In the margin of sleep, you imagine a future morning that arrives without a string of small betrayals. A glove that never tears, a falcon that chooses flight over nibbling, a nobleman who understands that praise should sometimes be quiet and private. It is not a promise you believe will come true, but it is pleasant enough to cradle for a while. When dawn edges in, it will be time to rise to the familiar clatter and begin again. For now, you have this thin, restorative pocket of night where the world is paused, holding its breath with you. The straw supports you. The blanket warms you. Feathers cling and the smell of wax remains, a stubborn signature of your day. You sleep in small, blessed measures, suspended between the duty you perform and the small rebellions of the birds entrusted to you. There is consolation here, quiet and private, the knowledge that duties end for a night, that even in a life threaded with feather and mud, there are spaces where the world softens enough for rest to matter. You allow yourself that softness, however temporary, and in the slow dark you drift toward morning as easily as a feather falls. Dawn arrives with the soft insistence of something that cannot be argued with. Light spills thin and pale across the floorboards, finding the small gaps in the shutters and painting the room with patient stripes. You open your eyes to the familiar palette of straw, wood grain, and the faintest sheen of oil from the glove tucked on the chair. There is nothing dramatic about this waking. It is simply waking, a slow acknowledgement that the world expects movement, and you, who have learned to move before the world asks, begin again. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and feel the cool air reach your calves. The muscles complain with the honest bluntness of someone who has used them all day long yesterday and will do so again today. You push yourself up and stand for a moment, letting your weight settle, as if testing whether your limbs remember the necessary motions. They do. They always do. That is the quiet miracle of routine. Its ability to train the body into obedience when the mind still feels tired. Outside, the grounds breathe awake. A rooster's single determined crow breaks the silence. Somewhere near the kitchens, the thud of a large pot being set to the fire creates a soft percussion that underlines your movements. The air is cool and carries the smell of wet earth, the echo of the rain from last night, and a faint remnant of wood smoke that climbs from the manor chimney. The scent of feathers is there too, subtle now, woven into everything that belongs to your work. It is the odour of continuity. You dress in garments that feel heavier now because they hold memories. Mud dried into seams, a grease stain by the wrist, the lingering warmth of yesterday's sun burned into the fabric. You secure the glove on your hand and check the seams one last time. They hold. That small verification gives you an odd sense of control. You gather what you'll need for the morning. Repaired jesses folded neatly into a leather pouch, a hood that sits compact and ready, a small knife, and a strip of wax for quick fixes. Each item has its place. Each item happens to have been the difference between dignity and embarrassment more than once. The mews lie waiting with its own slow heartbeat. You approach the door and pause, resting a hand on the rough wood, as if greeting an old acquaintance. The hinges protest with a low creak, you have come to accept as a companionable sound. You step inside and take a long breath, letting the air fill you. The smell of straw and feathers greets you like a blunt but honest friend. Birds shift softly on their perches, blinking and stretching, some with the slow elegance of creatures who are certain of themselves, others with the sudden impatient flutters of those who remember yesterday's demands too well. You begin your rounds with the practiced calm of someone who has learned to make patience look effortless. Small chores become motions sewn into your muscles, straightening straw, checking ties, listening for subtle irregularities in breath or movement. You move through the space with quiet steps, allowing the birds their dignity while asserting the careful authority required to keep things functioning. One falcon eyes you and, with perfect timing, gives your glove a tiny nibble, an affectionate reminder that despite all your planning, the birds maintain their prerogative to be unpredictable. The nobleman's voice floats from the hall beyond, warm and confident as ever. He will be ready for display later. His enthusiasm requires an audience. You do not hurry to meet it. You prefer the measured pace of preparation, the slow smoothing of details until they look presentable. Each hood fits, each jest clasps, each ring is secure. Your hands know how to correct what the morning has loosened because you have done it hundreds of times. Training begins with a breath you do not notice until you take it, filling your lungs to the rhythm of the room. You step into the field with a falcon balanced on your arm, the world around you softening as dawn peels itself fully from the horizon. The air seems kinder at this hour, light like diluted gold that rests on feathers and grass. The birds respond in shades, some with bright vigour that borders on rapture, others with the languid disdain of sovereigns sampling a menu they would never choose. The exercises unfold, not as a spectacle, but as a conversation. You offer cues, the bird answers, with a tilt of its weight or a flick of a wing. There are moments of annoyance, of course, a misstep here, an uncooperative dive there. There are times when a falcon chooses its own path and jewels the sky with unexpected arcs, leaving you to chase apologies and explanations among a half-amused audience. Yet between these small rebellions, a rhythm forms. A silent accord binding your breath to its wing beat, your step to its landing. These are the instances that teach you why, despite everything, you remain. Meals are prepared with the same quiet deliberation. You cut, portion, arrange and carry. The birds eat with a royal disdain that seems designed to remind you of their superiority. You take such reminders as a kind of payment, a daily, humble toll exacted by creatures who are both magnificent and maddening. They accept your offerings and in return demand your steady hands and patient temper. It is a bargain you did not choose but came to live by. Throughout the day, the nobleman drifts through the events with the unearned confidence of someone who believes presence is mastery. He pronounces judgments on wind and bird and landscape, certain that the story will adorn his name at supper. You do not argue. Your energy is conserved for more pressing matters. Mending a snap jest behind a hedge, retrieving a falcon that took a fancy to a hare, smoothing the nobleman's cloak, lest a thread betray your lord's pride in public. Little chores, vital in their smallness. At midday, when the sun sits high and the air sways with heat, you find a brief pocket of stillness. A gentle wind lifts the feathers at your sleeve, carrying with it the soft rustle of distant trees. You sit on a low stone, the falcon balanced easily now, as if acknowledging the respite as well. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the silence refill you. Sleep does not come here, but rest does. It is enough to reset the body, enough to make it willing to continue. The landscape tests you, as always. Paths lead through sullen marsh or around hedgerows that catch boots and patience alike. Each passage is a negotiation between terrain and intention. You learn to move with both caution and a casual acceptance of being slightly inconvenienced. Sometimes a boot will sink into a mud pocket and leave a trail to note for future work. Sometimes a sudden gust will send the falcon into a wild, gleaming arc that will require chasing and a clever apology. These trials are small, but they are steady, the tiny chisels shaping endurance. Evening arrives again, gentler than the heat of day, a slow descent of colours that coax the field into peaceful submission. You return to the mews with feathers that catch the light and eyes that calm into the soft glow of creatures ready to rest. You step into the rhythm of chores with practiced motions, smoothing straw and checking equipment, hearing, in the background, the manor's soft preparations for the night. The world closes around you in the same pattern it has followed countless times, reliable as the turning of a wheel. At night, as you lay again in the lumpy bed, you think about the day without the need to narrate its inconveniences. They settle into the record of your body instead, the stiffness that will soften by morning, the small cuts that will mend by week's end, the soft satisfaction of a well-tied Jess. You take in the quiet, the hush that falls when the falcons sleep, and find in that hush a strange comfort. There is a rhythm here, sometimes maddening, often flawed, but undeniably yours. You have learned to accept the peculiar blend of servitude and stewardship inherent in the work. Being a medieval falconer is to inhabit a world where praise is performative. Danger is more often mundane awkwardness than heroism, and the creatures in your care are simultaneously regal and mischievous. You proceed because you find value in small competencies, intending things that require attention and respect. You proceed because you have learned how to turn minor indignities into stories you tell yourself with a wry smile. The day folds into night with familiar tenderness. You sink into the thin mattress, the blanket warm from holding its own memory of the day's heat. Outside, the manor settles into its deep night breathing. Inside your chest, the day takes its place among many, neither triumphant nor tragic, simply lived. You close your eyes with the soft admission that despite everything, the mud, the beaks, the hoods that tear at inconvenient times, you have found some quiet peace in the work, because it keeps you moving, because it asks little more than patient competence, and because in a world full of uncertain fortunes, your tasks are constant. If regret lives anywhere here, it is small and honest. A wish for fewer pecks, cleaner gloves, perhaps a noble less keen on pronouncing victories not his own. But those are minor amendments in a life that, for all its inconveniences, offers the steady rhythm you have grown to rely upon. You breathe out, letting the day's cadence slow within you, and as sleep comes, you accept that tomorrow will be the same and different in equal measure. And so you rest, soothed by the familiarity of duty, and ready, in a soft, practical way, to do it all once more. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S., Rich Davis, and Leslie Schofield. Sleep well.